precise as mathematics. So even God cannot make 1 equal to 2. See, that's what he's trying to say there. So he says, it is admitted that there are certain things that he cannot do, such as make 1 equal to 2. But should we not believe that he has freedom to confer a soul on an elephant if he sees fit? So what he's saying here, we know that God cannot make 1 equal to 2, but we can believe that he can give a soul to an elephant. So he's making fun of God again here. First of all, he's saying there's certain things he can't do. But, since it's all fantasy, we can believe that he can give a soul to an elephant. He's making fun. It doesn't mean that God gave a soul to an elephant. But he's making fun here. Go ahead. Appropriately to minister. So what he's saying, okay, you tell me what he's saying.
Says that he can, that God can provide a mutation to the elephant that can make a better brain for the elephant.
Say that again. Say it again.
Oh, he cannot. Turing says that God can provide a mutation to the elephant that makes an improved brain to guide the body. I don't get the part where it says appropriately improved brain to minister the needs of the soul.
First of all, he starts with we might expect. What does that mean? No, it means that it's a speculation. We might expect. On what basis do you expect that? It's pure speculation, right? So there's, whenever you say, suppose that, or I think maybe, or assume that, these are all speculation, beginning of a speculation. So you say, assume that.
Yeah.
I think that. We may, how did he start this? It appears to me. We might expect. These are all words signaling the beginning of a speculation. So whenever anyone says anything like this, this is a speculation. So assume that. I think that. It appears to me. We might expect. Another one would be, what if? These are all ways of beginning a speculation. So he says, we might expect that he, meaning God, would only exercise this power. What is that power? To give a soul to an elephant. Only exercise this power in conjunction with the mutation which provided the elephant with an appropriately improved brain to minister to the needs of the soul. This is all nonsense, complete nonsense, but it sounds good.
Yeah.
So what he's saying here, if there is a God, then the way he would give a soul to an elephant is through a mutation. Why does he say that? Because he's bringing God down to, what he's doing here is basically equating God to nature. Not that there's a real God. Because these are things that the scientists say nature does. Nature produces a mutation, and all of a sudden one species becomes another species. Or the elephant has improved brain so that it can satisfy the needs. When you say minister to the needs of the soul, it means satisfy the needs of a soul. That this is all nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. But what he's trying to say is, if there was a God, then he would make a mutation so that the mutation means change the genes a little bit, so that now the elephant has a better brain to take care of the needs of the soul. Well, he's assuming that the soul is a material thing and it needs things like, food and oxygen and this thing and that thing. But that's not true. He's assuming the soul is material here. And in order to supply things to the soul, God would make a mutation. But he doesn't believe that there's a God. It's nature. And the mutation happens by some accident. And all of a sudden, the elephant can feed the soul, protect the soul, this thing, that thing. But the soul means the brain, the ability of the brain to think like a human being. So he doesn't say the computer. Already he equated. He made it equal animal, computer. Where did he do that? Look. Yeah, he says here in a theological objection that he makes himself, not the real priest make. He makes a theological objection. He said, thinking is a function of man's immortal soul. Okay, that's probably true. Right? If you have a soul, then you can think. God has given an immortal soul to every man and woman, but not to any other animal or to machines. So here, he's equating, because according to Christians, God didn't give a soul to the animals. And then he's extending that to machines. He's extending it to machines. So he's making animals and machines equal in his mind. Right? But he did it by taking the misconception of the Christians that animals don't have souls. He's using their philosophy to support his false point. And then he says, hence no animal or machine can think. Well, that's the straw man argument. Because they're making machines now that they can think like a human being in certain ways, in limited ways, you see. But we know animals can think. Right? And the Christians made a mistake. They think that the animals can't, they don't have a soul, so they can't really think. So he's equating thinking with having a soul. Thinking is a function of man's immortal soul. God has given an immortal soul to every man and woman, but not to any other animal or to machines. So you see how he sets the whole thing up here. This is the straw man argument. He's making assumptions. And he's using the assumptions to prove that his assumptions are true. Okay. He's assuming that God, like the Christians, didn't give a soul to an animal. But now he's equating an animal to a machine, because both things theoretically cannot think, because he says that the symptom of a soul is thinking. Right. Now that is not necessarily false. But to say that animals don't have a soul, that's false. And to equate a machine to an animal is not true either. That's false. But he's using the nonsense Christian philosophy to do this. So a Christian would believe, would follow this, would accept this. The devotees would not accept this.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the straw man argument is no animal or machine can think. You see, that's the straw man. That's the straw man. He's going to knock it down very easily now. He knocks it down with the rebuttal. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So, should I repeat the rebuttal?
Yes.
It appears to me that the theological objection implies a serious restriction of the omnipotence of the Almighty. It is admitted here that there are certain things he cannot do, such as making 1 equal 2. But should we not believe that he has a freedom to...
1 equal 2.
2.
Yeah.
But should we not believe he has freedom to confer a soul on an elephant if he sees fit?
This is a question. This is called a rhetorical question. Write that down. That is a rhetorical question.
How do you spell rhetorical?
Yeah, I'm just going to double check it. Rhetorical, but I want to double check that. Yeah, rhetorical. Rhetorical. So it's a rhetorical question means a question where you know what the answer is already. You're assuming the answer by the way he asked the question. Okay. So it is admitted. Let's see, wait a minute. And he says, it appears to me. That is the beginning of a speculation, right? It appears to me that the theological objection implies a serious restriction of the omnipotence of the Almighty. So, the theological objection that God did not give a soul to an animal appears to Turing that the Christians, by believing this, have put a serious restriction on the omnipotence. What does omnipotence mean?
Omni means all, and then the potence means power. So
yes.
all power.
Yeah, this is saying they're limiting God's power by saying this. Well, that's a correct statement. That's a correct statement that he made. Even though it appears to me can signal the beginning of a speculation, but he's right there. He's right when he says the Christians seem to be limiting God's power by saying animals don't have a soul. Okay. Then he says, it is admitted that there are certain things that he cannot do, such as make one equal to. Now it is admitted by who? Who admitted that? Some mathematicians? But why do they say that? Well, because they think mathematics is an exact science. They don't think, mathematicians don't think physics is an exact science. They don't think anthropology is an exact science. They don't think, chemistry, they think it's mostly correct. Yes? What? Anthropology? Anthro means men or mankind. So it's the study of mankind's history. Anthropology. Okay, so it says, it is admitted that there are certain things that he cannot do, such as make one equal to two. That's not true. If he's omnipotent, why can't he make one equal to two? You see? He's only saying that because modern people think that mathematics is an exact science. That's why. But there's a statement that's very interesting. It says that statistics don't lie. But people who make the statistics can be liars. So, mathematics is not an exact science, although it appears to be. So, because they assume that mathematics is an exact science, they're saying God, although the Christians say that God is omnipotent, he's saying even God can't make one equal to two. So now he contradicted what he said before. What did he say before? That he says the Christians have made a mistake by saying that animals don't have a soul. Because if God is omnipotent, then he can give a soul to an animal. Then he reverses that. He says, it is admitted that there are certain things that even God cannot do. Well, wait a minute. If you just said he's omnipotent, then now you're saying he can't do certain things like make one equal to two. Then he's not omnipotent. Right? But then he says, but should we not believe? That does not mean we should not believe. It sounds like we should not believe, but no, should we not believe? He's saying you should believe. When he's saying should we not believe, it actually means you should believe. What? That God has the freedom to confer, meaning give a soul to an elephant. Look, first of all, for Turing, God doesn't exist. But you can believe that he's omnipotent and he can give a soul to an animal like an elephant. But then he says, we might expect, now this is pure speculation, we might expect that he would only exercise this power in conjunction with a mutation which provided the elephant with an appropriately improved brain to minister to the needs of the soul. So now what he's done here is basically saying, look, there's no God. But if there was a God, the only way he could give a soul to an animal is through a mutation. Why is it the only way? Because he's not saying God exists. He's making God the law of the Darwin's theory of origin of species. That one species becomes another species, or one species improves by mutations, accidental mistakes. And then when it says administer or administer to the needs of the soul, now basically he's saying, yeah, if there was a God, the only way he could give a soul or thinking to an animal is through a mutation. But we don't need to do that. We can do it by making computers. And he already made computers equal to animals, right? So he's saying if there is a God, God is nature. And nature makes mistakes and produces different species and improves but through these mistakes that are accidental, you can also improve the intelligence of the elephant, and then the elephant can minister to the needs of the soul. What are the needs of the soul? The soul doesn't need anything material. The soul is not material, it's spiritual, right? But he's, by saying administer to the needs of the soul, he's saying the soul is something material. That it also needs food, and it also needs vitamins, and also needs this, also needs that, and a computer needs electricity, and it needs somebody to download things into it, and so we're ministering to the computers, and if there was a God, he would minister to the needs of the soul, which is a material thing, and the only way you could do it is through a mutation by which the brain of the elephant would improve so it could give more nutrition and oxygen to the soul that developed materially. It's all nonsense, but it's such cleverly done that it sounds scientific. Okay. Did you do your homework? Go ahead, let's hear it. You have more? Okay, go ahead, finish.
And then all the assumptions he makes that are not true.
Speak into the mic.
Thinking is a function of man's immortal soul. I don't know, maybe it's true, but it's still an assumption that he makes. So that would be...
No, the assumption is...
God cannot do such as making 1 = 2, says animals have no soul and therefore God is not omnipotent.
No, the assumption is that God only gave a soul to the animals. God did not. No, the only assumption is that God only gave a soul to man and woman, not to animals. But he equates animals to machines because you would think that a machine can't think and an animal can't think, right? So here he's using the mistaken idea of the Christians that God only gave his soul to human beings, not to animals. But he's adding machines in there because if animals don't have a soul, they can't think. Because he said thinking is the function of man's immortal soul. Now, is that true? Let's think about that. What is the function of the soul? Consciousness, which includes thinking, feeling, and willing. All right, so thinking is just one aspect of consciousness. Consciousness is thinking, feeling, and willing. It's not just only thinking. So, because of thinking, feeling, and willing, there's such a thing called awareness. That is the conscious. That is the symptom of the soul. The soul is aware of things. You have thinking, feeling, willing, and awareness. Krishna. Okay. And the soul does not depend on anything material. It doesn't need oatmeal to think, feel, and will. It doesn't need oxygen. It doesn't need, a computer to help it. It's independent of matter. He's trying to make it dependent on matter. Okay, go ahead.
And then he says things like we might expect at the start, which is like speculating. And then assuming the soul is material by saying like the soul needs something. And then he says it is admitted, but then he doesn't actually know who it's admitted by.
He doesn't state who it's admitted by. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Augustia.
Alan Turing was a mathematician, philosopher, logician, and computer scientist. So during his studies, he came across the field of artificial intelligence. So he thought that to be self-aware, you need to have souls, which is sort of true. And
He thought that? No, he didn't think that.
I think it said that in the thing.
No, he's in the theological objection. He says thinking is a function of man's immortal soul. But that's not his thought. That's the thought of the priests and the religious people. Go ahead.
In his strawman argument and theological objection, he used a false statement by the Christians to make it look like animals and computers are equal because they have no soul.
No, the Christians only say animals don't have a soul.
Yeah, and then he added that.
Then he equated an animal to a machine because a machine should not think either, right?
Then, in his rebuttal, he again exploits the mistakes by the Christians and uses a lot of jugglery of words. He suggests that because God can't give a soul to animals and computers, God is not omnipotent. Even though it is obvious that animals can think, he provides a segue that says that God
Okay, wait a minute. He doesn't imply that God is not omnipotent. He implies that the Christian point of view is a serious restriction of the omnipotence of God. You made a mistake there. You see how easy it is to make the mistake because the way he's speaking causes, it's confusing. He's saying that the Christian point of view, the theological objection point of view, implies a serious restriction of the omnipotence of the Almighty. He doesn't use the word God. He says Almighty. Because omnipotence and Almighty mean the same thing. Almighty means he has all power. Omnipotent, and that's an English word, Almighty. Omnipotence is a Latin word, and it also means almighty, or all power. You see how clever they are? I mean, this guy's like a poet, very clever. So, read what you said.
So even though it is... Wait, which part?
What did you say? That he believes that God is not omnipotent.
He suggests that because God can't give a soul to animals and computers, God is not omnipotent.
Right. He's not suggesting that. Do you see why? He says, it appears to me that the theological objection, what is the objection? That is, that God only gave soul to man and woman, but not to any other animal. And then he adds in, or machines. Right? So he says it implies that this theological objection of the Christians, not of him, He is stating what he thinks is the objection of the Christians. And he says that it implies that God only gave souls to man and woman, is a serious restriction of the omnipotence of the Almighty. Yes, in other words, the Christians who believe that God is Almighty or omnipotent, they're saying that there's something that God did not do. You say, so that means he's not almighty or omnipotent. He's pointing this out. He's pointing. See, this is a rebuttal to the objection. So, if you're going to rebut the objection, the theological objection, you got to show what's wrong in it. So he's saying the Christians got it wrong. God, thinking is a function of the soul, and God. The theological objection is God only gave the soul to man and woman, and not to animals, and of course extending it to machines. But if they say he only did this, they're implying that he was not capable of doing more, like giving a soul to an animal, the ability to think to an animal. So you got it wrong. Okay, keep reading.
Then at the end he provides a segue that says that God added mutations to animals to improve their brain, and implies that God is not powerful enough to just make a soul for the animal, for the animal. But his whole argument is based on...
He's implying that God is actually nature, and according to Darwin, and when nature makes a mistake, you have a mutation, and the mutation can lead to an improved brain for an elephant, or it can turn the elephant into an ant. They say that's what he's implying. Go ahead.
But his whole argument is based on two false things. One, animals do not have a soul, but can think because of a mutated brain. And the second one's actually wrong. So by using false arguments that are difficult to defeat, and using lots of jugglery to hold it together, he created an effective strongman argument.
Okay, so your homework for next week, rewrite this. Both, and correct your mistakes. You're going to read it. Okay, yeah, you're next. Go ahead. Turn the microphone on. You have to rewrite and do it, because if you learn this correctly, if you learn how to analyze this correctly, you'll be hundreds of times sharper than anyone else in your class. You'll be able to recognize right away when people are making false arguments. Go ahead.
So the homework was to state what the question was, and what the assumptions that Alan Turing made, and to explain the theological objection and the straw man argument, and to explain the rebuttal, and to point out the misleading jugglery, and to explain the segue. So the question were, can a computer develop a soul through artificial intelligence? And the other one was, can
the computer what?
Develop a soul through artificial intelligence.
Develop a soul, okay.
And can a computer think outside of the prescribed rules and algorithms? And the assumptions that he makes are that the symptom of the soul is only thinking, and that machines equal animals, and that animals don't have a soul. And so
that assumption that animals don't have a soul, that's the Christian's assumption.
Yeah.
It's not his. It's the Christian's assumption. His intervention there is he's equating animals to machines, using the Christian assumption that thinking is the symptom, is the function of the immortal soul. But we made a point clear here. It's awareness through thinking, feeling, and willing. The function of soul is not just only thinking. It's also thinking, feeling, and willing, and becoming aware or conscious. He just said thinking. There's other things that the soul, the functions that the soul has. Okay, go ahead.
And the theological objection is that God did not give a soul to the animals, and the straw man argument is that no machine or animal can think. And
Yes, very good.
Their rebuttal is that he says that the theological objection limits God's power, and he says that God could have given a soul to an animal if he wanted, but only if some mutation happened that made the animal intelligent. And then the jugglery that he uses is like using pronouns like it and he. He says that it appears to me. We don't know what appears to him. He just says it. And then he says it is admitted that there are certain things that he cannot do, but we do not know what is admitted or who admitted it. And he uses like things like we might expect or it appears to me, which suggests that that means he's speculating. And he says, should we not believe, which would make us think that we shouldn't believe, but it actually means that we should believe.
It doesn't mean we shouldn't believe. It sounds like we shouldn't believe.
Yeah, it sounds like, the way he says it sounds like he's saying that we should not believe, but it actually means that we should believe.
We should believe, yeah.
And the segue is that he's saying if God could give a soul to an animal if a mutation happened, then can't we give a soul to the computers if we made them intelligent?
Yes. Yes. Very good. See, let me tell you something. Listen very carefully now. If you can't state what the question is clearly, you will not be able to state what the solution is either. You have to understand what the question is. She outlined the question in a very complete way. Read your beginning of what you wrote. Listen carefully to this.
So the questions were, can a computer develop a soul through artificial intelligence, and can a computer think outside of the prescribed rules and algorithms?
See, that's correct. That's the question. Right? And then she, because she got the question correct, then she's able to get the answer mostly correct. You know, it was almost completely correct, her answer. Go ahead. Arush, you did your homework?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go slowly.
Part of it.
Huh?
I did part of it.
Okay. Go slowly.
The question was, explain what Alan Turing did in your own words.
Okay.
Alan Turing used these 3 steps to prove his point in his conversation. The step 1, statement of problem. Can a computer develop a soul by artificial intelligence?
Can a computer what?
Can a computer develop a soul
okay.
by artificial intelligence?
Okay, good, very good.
Can computer think outside the set of algorithms?
Yes.
Step 2, raises the theological objection. Theological means study of religions. Objection means to not agree. Christians believe that humans have a soul, but animals don't, because they believe that animals can't think independently. Alan Turing had compared animals with computers. Both don't have souls. Yeah, that was it.
Alan Turing believing that?
Alan Turing had compared animals with computers. Both don't having souls.
Yeah, because Christians say that they don't have souls. So he equates thinking with the soul. Right. Well, that's not a complete understanding of the functions of a soul. The soul thinks, feels, wills, has limited free will, either to choose to follow God's instructions or refuse to follow God's instructions. And a soul has what's called consciousness or awareness. Now, computers so far do not have awareness. They simply have whatever was inputted into them. If you ask a question that's outside of their input, they can't answer it because they don't have awareness. It's just a machine. It just can repeat whatever it's been given. And if it hasn't been given everything, then it's going to make a mistake somewhere along the line. Right? And what is it given? It's given through this algorithm. It's a set of rules by which it can function. So the computer is only good as the algorithms that it has. If it doesn't have a complete algorithm, then it's not going to be able to give you a complete answer. Okay, so next week's homework is to rewrite this, correct any mistakes you made, complete it if you didn't complete it, right? And then be able to explain more in depth what Turing did. So you have to explain what is a straw man argument. You have to explain what is a rhetorical question. What is the rhetorical question? We might expect that he would only exercise this power in conjunction with a mutation which provided the elephant with an appropriately proved brain to minister to the needs of this soul. That's a rhetorical question. In a rhetorical question, you actually know what the answer is. His answer is, but there's assumptions to his answer. The assumptions are, one, that the only way God could improve the elephant to administer to the needs of the soul is through a mutation. So that's now he's equating God to nature, and nature which functions under the Darwin's theory of the origin of species. It's happened by survival of the fittest and over a long period of time, and mutations. Say, mutations are mistakes, accidental mistakes that are made that most of the time leads to disaster, but sometimes it leads to an improvement. See, there's no. As soon as he said mutation, he brings Darwin into the whole discussion, and basically, his concept of God is nature, and functioning according to Darwin's theory. And then he's assuming that the soul is material because it needs things. And it needs and the elephant, if it does have a soul, it needs to have a good brain also, so that it can administer to the needs of this. It can minister to the needs of the soul. So, using the word minister instead of administer is another joke he's making. That usually ministers are priests or clergymen that minister to the congregation by performing the rituals of the church. So, by using the word minister, he's saying, there's no... you minister to the needs, the material needs of something. And he's implying that the soul is just matter in an advanced state. And you need improved intelligence to supply the needs of the material soul, such as food and oxygen and protection or whatever. And just like a minister ministers to the needs of the congregation. He's very subtle, very cynical. Write this word down: Cynical. 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 What does cynical mean? Anybody know? Augustia knows. What's cynical mean? Huh? Okay.
What was the homework after reviewing the mistakes?
Then you have to explain it.
Explain the mistakes?
Well, explain your revised analysis. So cynical means believing that people are motivated by self-interest, distrustful of human sincerity or integrity. But a second meaning is concerned only with one's own interests and typically disregarding accepted or appropriate standards in order to achieve them. Yeah, that's exactly, the second definition is exactly what Turing is doing. He's only interested in supporting Darwin's theory. He's only interested in supporting the idea that a soul is an advanced stage of material development. And he's only supporting his theory that there's no God and that Christians have made many mistakes philosophically and from a point of view of science. And that the new priests or clergymen, stop that. The new priests or clergymen are the scientists and the mathematicians and machines with artificial intelligence. Yes, Arush? Cynical means you're only concerned with your own interests and you disregard everything else, such as appropriate standards. And all this is to achieve to manipulate what people think to your point of view. This is exactly what Turing has done here. He's manipulating people to believe that the religious people are dumb, they don't know what they're talking about, and that there's no God, and that there's no spiritual soul. The soul is something that will evolve through artificial intelligence. And it's something material, it's not something spiritual. These are all the assumptions he's making, you see. And now, the next part of this, we have to read it also. There's something called Turing's test. You have to find out what is Turing's test. Huh? Yes. Turing's test, Turing test, T-E-S-T. What is it?
It's like a test that you did to see if a machine was capable of like the standard of artificial intelligence.
Yes, to see if the machine was equal to a human being through artificial intelligence. And it's all based on behavior. Right? So a human being can think. So if he can make a machine that thinks like a human being, then there's no difference. And whatever the human being has, the machine will have also. So if the human being has a soul, the machine will have a soul. So his test was, you have two tables. In one table, a person is sitting. And the other table, there's a computer. And you ask questions at each table. One where the person is sitting and one where the computer is sitting. And on the basis of the answers, you decide which desk is the computer. If you can't tell the difference, then this is proof by objective evidence that the computer can think just as good as the human being. Got it? This is his test. Okay, so you have to find out what Turing's test is. Yeah. Yeah.
He was not believing in God,
No.
but he was referring nature as superior to human beings. But he was also finding the fault in nature. So what is his belief? Like he was just believing
What fault is there in nature?
mutation.
That's not a fault. That's a process by which nature creates new things. It's not a fault. Yeah, a mistake is usually a fault, but
Not perfect. It's just learning and doing.
well, the point is that through mutations, you can produce. This is Darwin's theory. Well, Darwin never talked about mutations. It only came up later on to add to his theory of how one species becomes another species. Right? It's not true, but it's an explanation that seems true.
Where Alan Turing was standing, like he was like atheist and don't believe in,
No, he's an atheist. Doesn't believe in God.
and not even in heaven.
No, he believes that nature by itself can produce things without any God. It can produce its own energy, it can make mistakes and produce new species. Yeah, a mutation is considered a mistake. No, of course it doesn't sound right, but that's their theory. Okay, if you don't believe me, okay, don't call it a mistake. You call it a mutation. Let's look up the definition of mutation. It means that somewhere along the line, nature's made a mistake, but the mistake gave a new species or improved the intelligence of the elephant, right? M-U-T-A-T-I-O-N. M-U-T-A-T-I-O-N. Mutation. A mutation occurs when a DNA gene is damaged or changed in such a way as to alter the genetic message carried by that gene. A mutagen is an agent of substance that can bring about a permanent alteration to the physical composition of a DNA gene such that the genetic message is changed. Okay, now there's such a thing as biological mutation or biology. Mutations, definition. Mutation occurs when a DNA gene is damaged or changed in such a way as to alter the genetic message carried by that gene. A mutation is an agent of substance that can bring about a permanent alteration to the physical composition of a DNA gene such that the genetic message is changed. Okay, now there's 4 types. There are 3 types of DNA mutations. There's 6 types of mutations. Anyway, you get the idea. Mutation is something that is a mistake that happens by accident. Now, most of the mistakes that happen by accident don't give a good result. But sometimes there may be one that gives a good result. This is their theory now. This is not true. This is not true. But this is their theory, right? And sometimes it gives a good result.
So was he comparing himself equal to nature?
No, he's saying that nature has this ability over a very long period of time to make mistakes all the time, and most of them lead to a failure. But sometimes there's one out of millions that leads to an improvement. And eventually the one-cell amoeba becomes a human being. Over a long period of time, a long period of mistakes, and some improvements.
So when he's quoting that computer will have soul in future, so
Well, no, it's not the soul as you and I understand. It's the idea that the computer will be able to think like a human being, equal to the human being, so that if you have a computer in one table and the human being in another table, you ask the same question to both, the computer will give just as good an answer as the human being. So if you say a human being has a soul, now you can say also that the computer has a soul, because it can answer equally. You won't be able to tell which table the computer was sitting on or which table the human being was sitting on, because they're going to be equal in thinking. Got it? You see, these people are not dumb, they're smart, but the assumptions that they make, or whatever their beliefs are, they're dumb. But they twist everything around so it looks like it's science. Right? But you can tell by the language whether it's science or speculation. Right? If you're not able to analyze like this, you'll be fooled all the time. These people are experts in the English language, or in language in general. And they're able to twist it around and make anything seem plausible, even though it's nonsense. You know what plausible means? Plausible. Like believable, yes. Pausible. Augustia's got a good vocabulary. Do you read a lot, Augustia? Yeah. Well, see, reading a lot does not mean you have a good vocabulary. But every time you encounter a word in your reading that you don't know, you look it up in a dictionary. That's how you get a good vocabulary. It's not just reading and not knowing the same word even though you see it 1,000 times. Plausible means seeming reasonable or portable. Seeming reasonable or probable. It seems to be right. Or are skilled at producing persuasive arguments, especially ones intended to deceive. That's Turing. He's able to make arguments that seem plausible, but actually they're deceiving. Okay. So you got your homework for next week. So you have to learn two things in the Vedic tradition. You have to learn what's true, and you have to also learn what's not true. You don't have to learn what's not true by going to the demons. You can learn here what's not true by, first of all, understanding what's true, and then carefully analyzing the statements of the demons based on your knowledge of the truth. If you don't know what the truth is, then you'll believe anything. But if you know what the truth is, first of all, the soul is not something material. Secondly, nature is not God. God is a person, and he's the most intelligent person. And he has made everything perfect. Any imperfection we see is due to incomplete knowledge. Okay. Okay, you have a second homework. The second homework is you're going to read 16th chapter, 8th verse of Bhagavad Gita, 16:8, and make a list of all the qualities of demons. And then you're going to read 18th chapter, verse 8. And you, in the purport, you're going to make a list of all the qualities of a demon. And then you're going to read verse 18, 52, and 53. Let me just double check that. Yeah. And you're going to list all the qualities of a real devotee. 52 and 53. And now we're going to just compare them. We're going to compare Turing to Prabhupada. That's the exercise. You're going to study 16:8 to know the qualities of a demon. And then you're going to read 18:52 and 53 to know the devotees, the symptoms of a devotee. And then, wait a minute, I might have made a mistake. 1 second. Let me just double check. 16:8. Yeah, that's right. 16:8. And then we're going to compare Turing to Prabhupada. Haribol. Is this interesting?
Yeah.
Are you learning something?
Can you repeat the last question again? 18.52 and 53, and then what?
You're going to compare, well, you're going to know what a demon is, 16.8, and 18, 52, 53, you're going to know what a devotee is. Then we're going to compare Turing, a demon, to Prabhupada, a pure devotee. So very good, Sanskriti. So I want you to email me your answers, the answers that you gave today. Okay? You have my email? You have my email, Krishna?
No.
Harry@uncleharrys.com. You have my email, Augustia? And you got my email, Arush? I want you to email me what you wrote today for today's homework. Yeah, I want to analyze it more carefully. What? Yeah.
The one that we wrote
Today, without correcting the mistakes. UncleHarrys.com. Okay, you got that? But you don't know if your mom has the right email or not. Harry, Harry, @ Uncle Harry's with an S, no apostrophe, .com. At Uncle Harry's, UNCLEHARRYS. No apostrophe, .com. .com. I don't have gmail.com. Haribo.